Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we're going to be discussing what it means to go all in the dissolution of what Neville calls the hind claw. So, when you think about entering and occupying a new state, right? So, let's go 101. When you think about Inner Conquest, is what this channel's called, right? You are essentially on this channel because you're understanding metaphysics, which is unseen physics that affect reality and are the causative events that lead to creation, right? So thought, emotion, laws of vibration, laws of reversibility, law of assumption, law of attraction, all these different metaphysical laws that you can practice and test like a scientist to essentially manipulate your reality to be unfolding the way that you want it to, right? Cool stuff. So when you think about going into a state, right, it's important to reiterate these basics, because until you really know the basics and just do them all the time, you're going to keep coming back to information because you're not what's called unconsciously competent, right? So the primary goal with mastering a law or mastering a process is becoming unconsciously competent, which means that you do it subconsciously in the same way that when you get in a car, you don't think about doing all the stuff in the same way when you were learning about how to drive, right? You just understand it. So now you can drive the car really well without having to think, okay, brake, okay, what is shift? You know, there's not that jankiness. So you're working out the kinks in terms of jankiness when you're understanding these processes and you're practicing every day, right? So when you enter into a state, one of the biggest telltales that you're not fully in that state is, number one, if you have what's called a hind claw. So Neville speaks about hind claws as these little crabs would run off these cliffs, but they had a little back claw that would catch them so they wouldn't fully fall off the cliff or fully commit to the fall, right? Which is good for crabs, right? But for entering states, we don't want crabs and we don't want hind claws. Either of those things, we don't want them. So when you are essentially going into a state, I looked at a post the other day that really described this very well. You have to let that new state and that new reality invade your current reality, okay? So what does that mean, right? So when you're talking about dimensional spacing, you have your awareness, you have what you could call a fourth dimensional reality, which is a subtle reality, which is the Jacob in scripture, the supplanter, right? Which is that thought and emotional realm in between it's kind of like an augmented VR reality versus your third dimensional physicalized reality, right? You're essentially invading that fourth dimensional reality, i.e. populating that with sensory information that is as if it were happening in a third dimensional reality now, predominantly that your awareness is focused on, right? So if you have, wealth as your thing, right? You have to chronically be aware of wealth circulating and coming to you and making money. When you're in a poverty state, you're in what's called a non-fulfillment reality, right? You're literally looking at all of the different things that show you don't have money and you're assuming that they're true. Specifically when, you're like, well, I hope I can get a beer tonight, because if I get a beer tonight, I might not have enough money for rent next month, right? So you have this anticipation of not enough coming, right? Or whatever. And that's what your dominant awareness is focused on. So most people, right, will have that dominant awareness and then they'll go externally and they'll do a bunch of stuff and they'll even get money, right? But it'll be external. And this is where you get the billionaires who are like, I just need more to feel secure. Their internal identity and awareness is still one of lack. No matter how much you have externally, it never satisfies that emotional state, right? So you're really after the emotional state, and understanding this stuff is great because it really is getting your cake and eating it too. Like, you get to have the state which fixes the nagging unpleasantness of a current reality immediately, and it's the actual causative thing that makes shit manifest unseen to seen outside too. So you have to understand that understanding law of assumption is great because you get to fulfill yourself on that state level. You get to inhabit that state 24/7, because if you had the thing that you want, you would supposedly feel that way. So you get to feel that way and identify that way right now. So you really get the emotional payoff, you get the reward right now, and through that magnetism, it is now changed what you could call your point of attraction in the external world, meaning that now as you reiterate and ruminate on a fulfillment reality, the only thing that would stop you is going back to that old reality, which is what Neville calls the hind claw, right? Which is like you have a little money saved away just in case something happens. But if you're identifying as a multimillionaire, you wouldn't have $20 in your glove compartment that you're banking on for a rainy day, right? So that's one of the last vestiges you are really releasing when you go into a state, is what are called the hind claws, which are the different aspects of your reality that you hold on to that you think you need to feel secure, right? So when you go through that process, the best way is to just let those go and to use macro self-concept affirmations and processes, right? Because if you're stuck on a hind claw or it's really pulling you and you're scared to let it go, you're a version of yourself that has fear or whatever, right? So fear is just false evidence appearing as real. It's always a lie. Makes you think that you need something external to enter into a state, which is a lie. You can always go into any state that you want, but sometimes because we're in sleepy, scary, spooky time realm, this place makes you think that, well, if you don't do this, then you can't have this, which is all a lie, because you can always just go into that state, and the state is the real causative event that actually makes the world manifest around you. So through understanding metaphysics, you understand that you have your mind and that you focus and you think, and that you can always think as if you have what you want now, which changes your point of attraction, which changes the delivery system that law of attraction is bringing to you, which changes your vibratory resonance, which is the law of vibration. Things of the same vibration match up and align with each other, which is law of assumption. When you assume something, it hardens into fact. So the longer you assume it's there, it will actually crystallize and morph itself into an external fact, which is the law of reversibility, which is if I have something externally, it has a vibrational state-based counterpart. So instead of needing the external thing, I can just embody the state as if I have it now, and that will reverse reflect as if I have it on the external reality. And so you just manipulate the laws from an internal locus of power to have what you want all the time, and then you basically just recalibrate and reconfigure the entire realm or simulation or whatever you want to call it to basically meet your criteria and your standards at all points in time. So understanding these laws is badass because it puts you in the driver's seat. It allows you to literally be a director of your movie. It allows you to also be your own source of fulfillment, which means that if you have a desire, right, you can essentially embody the version that has that now through entering and occupying the state of the individual that has that now, which means that you're able to, i.e., conquer your inner domain, which goes back to scripture, which is the conquest of Jericho. You have two functions. You can always put your spy and your harlot, which represent the qualities of your mind of being able to put your fourth dimensional reality in a state, and then the harlot represents that state has to express whatever you put into it, so you don't need anybody's permission to go into states anymore, right? So every hind claw, generally speaking, is like you need validation from this thing to do something, or oh, if I don't have this title, then who am I going to be, or whatever. Well, you have to get over all that stuff because it's limiting you. It's essentially conditioning you to have belief in second causes, which is every second cause is a tyrant, right? Every second cause is always going to block you 100% of the time until you discard it and go, oh, that doesn't matter because I can go into the state that I want to have now, right? And then it's just a process of discipline and understanding that you have to buy what is called the pearl of great price, which is essentially putting all of your eggs in that basket of the state expressing. And that can be difficult in the beginning because if you don't have very much circumstantial evidence of things working out that states that you have gone into, then it's easy to fall back on, well, oh, I need to do this to get this thing. But no, you be the thing and you allow the thing to reflect, because when you be the thing, you take automatic action, meaning that you take action from the identity that you're being through the awareness that you're focused on, right? So if I'm focusing on winning all day, my autonomic nervous system will program itself to essentially execute and not self-sabotage. If I'm focused on things not going well, my autonomic nervous system will program itself to essentially block because it is taking instruction from whatever the conscious mind is focused on, right? Your subconscious mind, big old mind, right? Conscious mind, big mind too, but limited in its awareness, only aware of about 1% of factors. So if you are programming your conscious mind with what you want, that subconscious will get trained to essentially execute in the wavelength pattern or the vibration pattern or the focus pattern or the identity pattern that you put that conscious mind on. So you just really control that mind and live in the end, which means accurately targeting your wish fulfilled, which means accurately thinking righteously, which means not sinning, which means not missing, which means hitting the mark every single time. So you, boom, you want something, okay, boom, you're in the state, you're accurately thinking from the state, not of the state. You're first person thinking, I am the person who has this now. This is how it goes down now. I'm seeing it in my mind now. This is how it goes now. Knowing that the external world is a reflection of that internal state. Boom, you're a beast, okay? So I know you guys enjoyed this video. The coaching is in the link tree. Feel free to leave comments for different videos that you would like made. The most important thing that I have to say today out of everything that I've said is go conquer, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.